RSVP.
So yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Meeting follow-up. Anybody have anything from last week's public meeting or anything like that? Carter?
I do not, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you. Eric, you have anything? Council? Does anybody have anything from last week? All right. Disposal of city-owned properties. Carter?
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good evening, everybody. It's good to be with you tonight. You have probably seen in the packet that we have two pieces of property we're going to talk to you about tonight. One of which that we have labored over for some time now, as in the form of the Trevitt Lane property. Council is aware that we, I mean the council, took the steps of rezoning that property in such a way that it would elicit some responses and so forth from developers, and you've noticed, I'm sure, that was the case. We also have another piece of property that we are selling that really is more right-of-way that an adjacent property owner would like to buy and has in fact submitted a bid for. In both cases, we do see that the proposals and the bids and so on associated with each of the properties do not match identically with what it is that we got appraisals for. In other words, they don't match the appraisal value. However, we still would recommend that council consider moving forward with those pieces of property. The pictures of which you now see on the screen, this of course is the Trevitt Lane property, and the next property is at the corner of 13th and Locust. The property at Trevitt Lane was bid at a discount, if you will, of about $30-some thousand, and the property at Locust and 13th was bid at a discount of $15,000 roughly. And so the purpose of tonight's discussion in this regard is to talk about these possibilities and get your direction to move forward. I would certainly say that in both cases where we have a developer involved on the Trevitt Lane side and a private property owner neighboring this property that you see the picture of right now, they both will be much higher productive uses than what they are right now. And as a matter of fact, I would suggest are actually a liability to the city, in that we have costs every year to maintain these properties and to deal with them and so forth and so on. So our recommendation is we move forward. However, that's exactly why we're here tonight, to go through these discussions and see what it is that you'd like to do. I will invite Liz up and Craig to walk us through this in case you have any additional questions that might help clarify a direction for you tonight. So,
well, you have a PowerPoint, Liz. You have a PowerPoint for us tonight? Good. We need you to extend the meeting just a little bit. So does she have something to talk about, or do we want council?
I'd say questions.
Questions, Liz?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So does council have any questions either for Carter or Liz?
And Craig, he did say Craig.
I specifically said Craig, Your Honor.
Craig, you can say there is parade day. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Any questions for Liz about Trevitt Lane and this? Yep, Kyle.
Thanks, Mayor. Sorry, my stuff is pulling up very slowly on my laptop. Thanks, Liz. My question is, my understanding is that the last appraisal done on Trevitt and Robertson was in 2022, and it was markedly, significantly more, about twice as much. And so I was just curious if you have any insight in regards to why in 2022 we got an appraisal of 1.03 million, and now we're getting roughly half that.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, a lot of that had to do, we had it rezoned to the urban agriculture zoning, and that is what the appraisal with the most recent was based off of.
Okay.
And the other one had the opportunity for commercial development, which you all had really wanted to not have as available. Okay.
Appreciate it. I figured that would be the result of zoning it urban ag. Restricting its use would probably diminish its value, so I was halfway expecting that, but the bid that we got is identical to the bid that we got last time around. The bid would require a rezoning, and so my worry is that we went through the effort of rezoning it to urban ag, and should we accept this bid, he's essentially getting, I realize that the initial bid the first time around was probably similar, if not the exact same in price. So the developer is not potentially paying more, but we've simply reduced our appraisal price 50% and, are going to let them move on. So I guess that's one concern I have is, us potentially just asking for half as much and it aligning with this bid. I also do have concerns about the bid. I heard a lot from my neighborhood and community on the west side of town about that development when it was first initially proposed, and that was what led to the whole effort of rezoning it. And so I certainly have great hesitation about accepting this bid because it's what spurred us to rezone it in the first place. So apologies if I did not make those concerns. If I was not transparent with that when we put it out to public bid. But yeah, those are the concerns I have is the rezoning effort, bringing the appraisal price down 50% and this bid being identical to the one that we received in the first place, which I know we're trying to allow for more affordable housing, and there's always going to be a degree of NIMBYism that we have to confront while on council, but especially since we have not gotten our Robinson Road corridor study back yet. I guess my belief was that we were going to have that in place before we even considered something like this anyways. And so to me, it feels premature.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me vent.
Mr. Mayor.
No.
Council, thank you for sharing that. I don't think there was a question in there though.
Was I misinforming anyway? I don't want to misinform. So if I was incorrect in any of that, I'd want you to correct me on that. But yeah, I guess it's not more so a question for you. It's more so just me giving my perspective to the group without having the Robertson Road corridor study completed yet. I think at the very least, we need to wait for that because that was one of the main issues that the community had about the twin homes was the impact of traffic in the area. The charter school just north of this has not quite opened. I imagine it'll open in the fall. And so it would certainly make me feel better if we've given the charter school 6 months or so to see what sort of impact that has on Robertson Road. And so yeah, that's where I'm at. I would welcome feedback, but
Carter wanted to jump in real quick unless you have something. No, Carter.
What about jumping?
You're, no, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine if Carter.
Thank you.
Just ask for permission.
I think you're bringing up some really interesting points, Counselor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. The impression that staff got was that we would indeed move forward with a bid process and not wait until the Robertson Road corridor study was complete. And so if we misunderstood that, then that was on staff, but I don't believe that was the direction we got. And so that's not to say that, you can reject all bids, so to speak, which in this case is just one, and do that, wait until the corridor study takes place. But at this point in time, we felt like we were not only responding in the timing as it relates to the solicitation of bids, but also as it relates to the rezoning of said property, which we thought addressed a lot of the concerns that you had with respect to the possibility of a commercial application taking place at this corner, which certainly generated a lot of conversation consistent with what you're talking about. But from what we understood, the timing as well as the rezone is with respect to what we thought council asked us to do in terms of moving forward with this. But we are open to further direction, of course, if council has it.
Can we get Michael and then I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Michael.
So yeah, I had some of the same questions or concerns that Kyle did about the change in property value and the valuation, but if it's connected to the zoning, to me, it seems that, I may be wrong, but the zoning that it is now is as urban ag to R3. That would be the potential next request for rezone. I mean, I can't see where there would be much difference because they're both residential. Is that an accurate, I don't accept it, but would that be accurate? I mean, in terms of the value of the property between, because it's not going back to commercial, it would still be residential. So I don't think that would change the assessed valuation or the fair market value. I mean, I know it's hard to say, but.
Yeah.
But anyway, but then the other thing that gives me a lot of satisfaction and comfort is that the fact that this is building homes that we desperately need. This is the exact price point that the community needs. And this will really, I think, do a lot to, I believe, address that price point of affordable homes for people to buy. They're not rentals. They're twin homes. Again, I think their major attraction is going to be to young families and seniors. If it's seniors, I've been told by realtors that several times that there's a glut of homes that are available that are empty nest folks that are elderly that would like to move to another home, but there's nothing on the market that meets their requirements in terms of single level, minimum maintenance, et cetera, affordability, et cetera. So at least what I've seen on the market in that price range that a senior would want to afford is they've either been flipped, they're multi-level, access is difficult, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think doing this is a good move on the part of the city to address that housing need, number one. And then in terms of the traffic, I do understand that for sure. I mean, I think depending on the traffic pattern that comes in and out of that, I think that's where I think we want the city to weigh in terms of the location of those in and out access points to that plot, to that subdivision, and just continue to work with the community. I've driven down there a number of times, and I just couldn't help but thinking with the development that's going on further west of there that at some point somebody's going to have to bite the bullet and either put in a second bridge or widen the existing one, or I don't know. I mean, I know the community definitely wouldn't want a 4-lane road going through there. That's not reasonable either. But anyway, those are my 2 cents. There wasn't a question in there either. So just so you know.
Amber and then Kyle.
In terms of timing, I think we changed the zoning to see if we got other additional bids to see if that generated any further interest. It clearly didn't. We still have the same interest at the same price point, at least nearly the same price point. To me, it actually helps me to know what the plan is there when we are considering the Robertson Road corridor study versus having a big question mark there as we're trying to make sense of the corridor study. So I actually prefer to kind of know what's going on there so that we can take that corridor study into context with the full kind of scope of potential development there. So that doesn't give me a lot of pause. And I think all that's happened since the last time we had this conversation is the need for more housing has become further defined for us. So I'm inclined to say move, and then the traffic that's something that we have to deal with. And that is, those patterns can be adapted by actions that we take to mitigate traffic pinch points and signals and everything else. So I think we need to be prepared for that. But I don't think that's a reason not to let development happen there.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple different things. Councilor Bond brought up the fact that at some point development may necessitate increased ingress and egress kind of out of that community. And I would agree. Craig Collins spoke to it at a previous meeting. I don't remember if we had the newish counselors on board at that time, but they talked about the fact that there was initially plans to build out Trevette to connect to the bypass, but the exchange of land with the state in the Red Butte area has blocked us off from that now. So that is not a possibility any longer, whereas Craig in the planning department, I think it's something they had been considering for 10, 15 years ago before the when the bypass got built, to create some more exit and entrance out of the community. We can't do that any longer, and so we are just kind of stuck with what we have. And so respectfully to Councilor Pollack, I still think the study needs done ahead of time, because I don't want the study to confirm, oh yeah, this development, you're way over capacity on this road and now you got to widen it to 4 lanes, because I wouldn't support that. I'd rather know ahead of time, if you plan on building this sort of development, you will need to increase the roads, because that would solidify my kind of opposition to building out this area in a more dense fashion. I would also say that our effort that we went through, so I don't want to throw city staff under the bus at all. I do not blame you for having that impression. We gave you that impression, myself included. So this was an oversight on my part not to bring these concerns up when we initially agreed to put it out for bid. Craig, you're here. I didn't know you were here. So sorry, I'm speaking for you. Had I known you were in the room, I would have, and feel free to weigh in once I'm done with my comment, because I appreciate your perspective on this. My understanding of the effort that we went through to rezone it to urban ag was not necessarily to influence the bids that we were receiving, but because we heard from the community that that's kind of the restrictions they wanted on the property. They, we heard opposition to the dense residential, certainly the R4, certainly the commercial. There was a little bit more willingness, I think, when we talked about piecemealing some R3 in there, but I thought that our effort through rezoning it to urban ag was based on the input that we received from the community and their comfort level with what they would like to see developed here. And to me, it doesn't make sense for us to have gone through that effort to rezone it urban ag, to reduce the appraisal price 50%, to just end up accepting the bid that we got 18 months, 2 years ago in the end anyways. That seems like a huge waste of time and resources, and not in line with kind of what I thought the intent was of us going through the rezoning process. So, but again, not a question in there, but if you have anything to add, Craig would certainly welcome it.
I don't know if it'll make a difference. I just wanted to mention that the corridor plan is a global big picture plan. If the developer does what he says he's going to do, which is 60 units of housing, it would generate a need for a traffic study that would be specific to this development. Much more in detail, much more focused on this development and its impacts. And if there were negative impacts, they would be required to mitigate those impacts. And that cost would be on that developer. So I just wanted to mention that, give you some more information on the traffic.
Appreciate it.
Randy.
So with the property as it is now, I don't want a 4-lane, but hear me out. What if we did decide we did need a 3-lane, perhaps? Do we have room now, or do we shave that off since they're lowballing us anyways? So that we do potentially have room to widen the road if it needs to be done.
I don't know the exact right of way, Mr. Mayor. But I think it's pretty wide. We've got that whole other side of the road where the walking path is, that I believe is all right of way. I believe that there's plenty of room if we needed to widen the road.
So I'll weigh in really quickly, unless there's anybody else that wants to comment. I'm much in line with Amber, and I guess I'm confused because we gave direction to the city staff to move forward with this, and I guess to me, I'm trying to reconcile the idea that, okay, we gave this direction, the council or the staff did all this work, and now we're coming back with some issues and concerns, which is not unheard of and not something that we cannot always do, or we can't address and deal with, because we've had it happen before. But we were pretty clear and we did give them direction to go forward with this and to do the bid. And this is what came back. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but I think staff may be confused to some extent as well. Just I'm trying to read the room a little bit, but I just would thought I'd throw that out there. I'm very much in favor of moving forward with this. So, Amber.
I mean, that was my understanding, and also that when we zoned to urban ag, I was under the impression that we expected
Yes.
that the builder or whoever put a bid in would be looking for a rezone of some variety. That seemed pretty clear to me when we picked urban ag, because I was like, why are we picking urban ag? That seems
Correct.
And that was the answer that I got. I was like, I'm gonna do it that for now. Very likely that a rezone would be requested.
Yeah, Kyle.
In that case, again, it sounds like maybe I was not aligned with my colleagues during the rezoning effort in regards to what our intent and purpose of that was. To me, I wonder why we would have zoned it urban ag in the first place if all we're doing is cutting our appraisal price in half and it's going to be rezoned anyways. Why the hell not just leave it R3 and get a higher appraised price and let them keep the zoning to do their development? It doesn't, again, it's not making a whole lot of sense to me still.
As Ms. Becker alluded to, I think the neighborhood was nervous about the commercial mixed use aspect of the PUD zoning. And I think this was a response to that nervousness to say, we're not going to let commercial go in here, and we're going to let the developer bring us a plan. Excuse me, and we'll assess the plan based on the plan rather than opening it up to anything with the PUD zoning. So I think that was in response to the neighborhood's concerns. And I think we also addressed the turn lanes with them at the time, something we could do cheap and easily to address their concerns, let them know.
Which I'm super grateful for. I'll speak on behalf of the community. It's made a ton of difference out there, so thank you. And for the restriping they just did a couple weeks ago.
In my mind, I think the agriculture zoning was always a mid-step, if you will, knowing that they would, any developer would bring in a plan and it would have to stand on the merits.
So basically what we need to do is then, are we going to accept the bid or do we not? And then, because if we do accept the bid or we don't accept the bid, we have to have a formal motion at the next meeting. Is that, am I correct in that, Carter?
In order to award the bid.
Or in
Yeah.
order to award the bid, we'll have to have a formal motion next week.
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we reject the bid, then what happens?
I still think we need to have a process to reject the bid.
Even though, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle.
What is I mean, is this an item on consent agenda? Is it 3 public readings? I'm failing to remember us accepting a bid in the past. What's that process play out?
It's a one and done, I believe, isn't it? We're not changing an ordinance that I can recall.
Mayor, Counselor, I believe that typically it's on consent. It's a resolution or a bid in action to either accept or reject the bid or bids. So certainly the prerogative of any council member to pull it off of consent and have it as a standalone item as well.
Thank you. Knowing that I'm not feeling the pressure to get it off the city, out of the city portfolio. I don't feel like the juice is necessarily worth the squeeze at this point. Again, I would strongly advocate we wait for the charter school to get up and running. I'd strongly advocate we wait for the Robertson Road corridor study and then put it out for bid again, and we can have a more informed discussion at that point. That's my position, and would certainly welcome my colleagues to agree with me on that. It sounds like I could potentially be outvoted in that regard, and so at the very least, I would ask for it not to be on consent, at the very least.
Just another observation, again, no more, not a question, but just another observation. My interpretation again would have been that with the zoning being an urban ag, that if I understood the zoning, that would be probably larger lots, fewer homes perhaps, but larger homes, larger lots, which what I was surprised at, honestly, looking at the bid information we got in the packet, was that was the only bid we got. Is that correct? I guess there was a question. So that was the only bid which I'm surprised at, given that 576 is pretty good compared to what the asking price before. So I feel like if there was a developer out there who really wanted to do urban ag or just any kind of higher price point residential, that would have been prime land to do it, and we didn't get it. So that gives me some pause, I guess, and just, I feel like, to me, like I said, I won't repeat it all, but this is what the community needs in terms of housing, what Casper needs. But anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, and you all noticed in the packet, we really had good public engagement, a lot of publicity with this particular sale.
Yeah.
It's all included in there. Media picked up quite well.
Paper.
And yeah, and we had photos and everything of the property. So we really went the extra mile with this particular.
What we didn't mention also is we reached out to individual developers. We have a developer forum list, and we sent it out to them individually. As well. So.
Mm-hmm. That's the group that we have with Coffee Talk.
Randy.
I mean, we had a really high valuation and we've lowered it significantly. Can we counter and say, well, we'd really like at least what we devalued it for you? Do we have to take the low ball bid? I realize it's the one bid, but I feel like we should at least try to get what it's worth.
Go ahead. Anybody from staff?
Mayor, Council, I don't know that we've ever done that, typically because of the statutes requiring us to put it out for bid. Usually we're kind of locked into the bids that we receive. And if we don't like it, we can certainly reject it and open it back up. Considering that we had one response, then he may come back at a different price point or not at all. But I don't know that we have that latitude under the statutes when we're disposing of real property.
So if we had one person and then let's say we reject the bid and we only had one person bid for it, and then we say, okay, we come back to the table and say, well, we're going to ask for more. Would that impact it in the sense of saying, I mean, maybe I'm asking a dumb question, but we'd come back and say, oh, we want 800,000 for it.
You would need, Mr. Mayor, an appraisal that would support that type of.
But we don't have that.
That's
appraisal.
right, exactly,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
So the difference is $36,000.
Gotcha, okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Mayor. One observation, again, because we've talked about this seems to be filling a need for quote unquote affordable housing in the community. And potentially it's as cheap as housing gets these days. Maybe the market has just adjusted to the point that this is considered affordable, but the sales price per unit is estimated at 350 grand. That's 3 times what I paid for my first home 12 years ago. Again, things have changed, but to me, if it was $250,000 homes, that to me is way more attractive than 350,000, which my understanding is that's right around average median home price, which isn't exorbitant, but it's for those people looking to buy their first home. To me, it is not fitting the bill in that regard. So again, if the proposed development was a little bit more in line with what I consider truly affordable housing, I might be more willing to bite, but I'm just not convinced in that regard. My question is, what are our, I know it's been done in the past, but what considerations need to be made for selling property below appraised value? Any consideration? I thought we were kind of mandated to a certain extent. I don't, so just what's the context?
So Mayor, Council, I think you're required to have the appraisal. I think that you can take into account other non-monetary factors as part of that consideration. For example, hypothetically that, we've talked about a lack of affordable housing, and if you were to get a below appraisal offer, which you have before you here, but because of the need for additional housing, council makes that policy or political decision. I think you are empowered under the statute to go on and accept it. It becomes really a policy or a political question, then how much under the dollar amount appraisal are you willing to part with the property. But if you've publicized it, you have the appraisal, it's all made public, then the public knows. And I think that's the transparency that the statute is trying to get at.
Thank you. One
Yeah,
last
you bet.
question. Trying not to monopolize this conversation, sorry. My question is actually about the other property. I have a lot less heartburn about that one. The scale of the lot, I mean, Craig, maybe it's a question for you or Liz. What, you know, that we got that at half the appraised value, but to me, that's a really weird spot. I don't see many people trying to take advantage of it. I'm just curious, y'all's perspective. What could you build? I mean, is that big enough for a single family home, or is that more so, you know, drive-through coffee kiosk? Like what could you see as a purpose for that?
Mr. Mayor, our minimum lot size is 4,000 square feet, and that one's 5, so it is large enough to build on. It is a difficult lot with setbacks. You have to be kind of a strange shape